Okay, thank you, Rebecca. Good evening. Thank you all for coming and being here on time. It's great. I'd like to call this meeting to order, noting that all members are here. And the first item on the agenda is to do the oath of office. But before that, we have one more send off for David. We have the plaque, which is quite
Very nice.
Oh, that is nice.
Very nice.
Thank you.
Yes.
Hey, well,
So from our WASB, presented to David Fetcher for his dedicated service to the Waunakee Community School District. So I think Rebecca's going to take it over now and do the oath for our candidates that just got recently elected.
And I'm just going to ask you each to just read it all together and then just say your name. So that part will sound garbly, but that's okay. So whenever you're ready.
Ready?
Yes.
I, Judith Ackerman, have been elected or appointed to the office of WCSD Board of Education, but have not yet entered upon the duties thereof. Swear or affirm that I will support the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of Wisconsin, and will faithfully discharge the duties of said office to the best of my ability. So help me God.
And then please sign it. And I'm witnessing you signing this, so then I will notarize it.
Okay.
And then give you ready to pause. Or would you guys like to go into closed session? You need to make a motion. If you want to do
Yes,
that.
we need a motion to go into closed session.
moving on to closed session.
Second.
Perfect. We need to do that by roll call. Mark?
Aye.
Jack?
Aye.
Judy? Aye. Dave?
Aye.
Tim?
Aye.
And myself, aye. Thank you.
Okay,
We are
and
now in
I will
closed session.
pause the meeting.
Thank you, Rebecca. So at this point, I need a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved.
Second.
Mark, Judy, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Thank you. There was one public comment that came in. I hope everybody had a chance. Oh, no, not about this.
That's
It came in on
each other's.
something. Yep. Sorry, that was my first meeting. So I don't think there was any public comments. So we are down to the evaluations, starting with the board evaluation. And we have like a couple different categories, but in your packet, I didn't look in my packet. Rebecca, you did, you did print the whole
I did.
school perceptions.
I decided that it would be easier for them.
Thank you. So I'm not sure how you want to go through it. I personally kind of looked it over with comments. Things that jump out to me are things that have wide standard deviations that might be low to middle scores, but the consensus was so clear. So I more looked at some of those items. And again, anybody can call out anything on the survey that you might want to have some clarification from the board or more discussion from the board. The first one that I have is really on the second page that says, we honor our decisions outside the board meetings, not undermining majority decisions with which some disagree. And the scoring was, you can't argue with scoring, it's how you perceive it. But, I'm concerned that there were some that felt that that was fully achieved, and then you have some that felt it was not achieved at all. So I don't know if anybody has any concerns or comments about a voice outside of the board, or if that's important that we have a unified voice when we do our meetings.
Well, I think it's important that we have a, if we vote and it's the majority, I would even if you're on the minority side, I think you got to find a way to support what we decide as a board. But it's been hard the last couple of years to find, and that's I wasn't at number 4 on this. There's a lot of different issues that had come up with social media stuff and just disagreements in our
Is it-
community. So
Yeah, is it comments that actual board members are making, or is the issue with the public commenting on our vote? Okay. I guess I don't even know where the issue lies. Is it comments made on social media that we're not in agreement as a board here, which we don't need to be? I mean, that's why we have 7 different voices, and we're not all going to think alike, nor should we think alike. But when we leave, I agree with you. I think it's important that we support whether it was our choice or not here.
Well, is there, I guess this is something, I know the moral compass is for school boards, okay, in terms of communications and voting. And when I've engaged in conversations, I supported the vote, and I can't recall an instant where I personally expressed a disagreement with it, but as a board member, if a constituent is asking, well, where were you on this? I think it's fair to say I voted against it, but I support the board's vote as part of the school board membership. I don't know how much detail to get into your disagreement then.
Yeah.
And I would say I was somewhere, I don't remember specifically, but either mostly or partially achieved because of concern about how it's a tough time right now.
Yeah.
So how do we handle that personalization and whether it's individually or publicly? I think publicly, we can't go out and say we disagree with it. Personally, I don't know what the guideline is.
Yeah, but when you're asked, if they specifically ask any board member or the people running for the board were specifically asked, how did you vote? In, the masking issue.
Right.
You have to say, you have to tell them what you did.
Well, the vote is public too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They could have watched the board meeting and we all say publicly how we're voting.
So.
But I think there's a way to say, and I'm not sure anyone has violated. I think there's a way to support what your vote was without denigrating the board.
Right. And I guess I just hope, that is.
yeah, well, I think I know this is an annual thing, but I still felt the same way as I did my first year, that there was just too much social media discussions that sort of reflected on the whole board in a negative way. So, and I still felt that continued this year.
But I think if you do vote one way, I think you do have the right to identify why you voted that way.
Absolutely.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Because, whether people voted against you or not, it's
Doesn't matter.
because we're representing different constituents, so theoretically the same constituents, but I think that's positive discussion.
I'd like to move on to, on the next page.
Well, don't go so fast. I like to just stress our meetings are effective and efficient. In the 4 years? Yeah, because I think I have 2 left. This has always been a tough grade because there is so much between months to bring to the table. And then you never know before the meeting where the conversation's going to go. So I recognize this has always been a challenging thing. I think it's always going to be for whoever the board president is. I like to say I thought Tony did an excellent job with our meetings this year, and I don't think this grading is necessarily a reflection of your skills as a leader. I thought, this is just a tough thing with the agendas we have.
They're long. And you're right. And I never feel like it should be necessarily my place to cut off discussion. I do appreciate, say what you want to say and not repeat yourself. When it starts getting repetitive, I try to reel it in and move on. But, I think everybody needs to be free to kind of share around.
I have a question regarding this. I mean, what is everyone's opinion? Is this meeting for us or is this meeting for the public to hear what's going on?
This evaluation?
No, our board meetings,
Oh,
I think.
because that's where it gets long.
Yeah.
When there's no actionable items, everything is on our website for them to come to go see if they want to. And the first year I took it as more, we need to bring it out here so the public hears it, but it's also in our notes and in everything else. So I'm curious, because that's what takes a long time, how I should be looking at this. Is this for the public or for us to actually get work done?
Well, I think it's from my standpoint, it should be a working meeting.
It should be sorry.
A working meeting.
Yeah.
And, obviously the public can listen. There's been occasions where we voted on things and, the public didn't even know we voted or couldn't figure out what we were voting on by the time we voted. So I think there's probably some room for improvement from, that point. And I think we've got it's been a challenging year, with all the emails and things like that. I guess you can say it often enough, but if you look at the number of things that we actually vote on per meeting, it's not that much.
It's probably the order that things are addressed in the meeting that could be, for some meetings, more effective. But, I think, especially when there are those late meetings, sometimes there's things on that agenda. It's like, this needs more discussion potentially, and we're just ready to stab done. I've felt like that on some,
Yes.
It's kind of like three things that we talked about. One is consent agenda. Then you're comfortable with one. So what degree are you comfortable with us using that as a mechanism to kind of move some things off that are just kind of annual type things? And I think we've been probably more willing to do that in the last year or so than previously. The second part, I think, is exactly what someone else said was if you don't have an action item for like, you have a curriculum committee that took place, that committee has talked through a number of things. If it's not an action item, then you have to think about, do you need to rehash that meeting at the table? Otherwise, you refer people to the minutes and you go on and you can do the actionable pieces. And then to the other point is kind of when we start to have particularly motions of amendments, I think that's a piece for the public we have to clarify. We have to kind of so this is kind of what we're voting. Here's what we're voting on. So that there's this clarity. Because that's the pieces that I decided some feedback on as to what was the decision on that item. As far as, so that's one thing just from a communication standpoint, but from an efficiency piece, it kind of looks at what are you reporting out on to what level, and then what do you want in the actual consent agenda or the actual agenda. Then it kind of gets to like, we have some items that have to find their way through multiple committees. They find their ways through HR and budget. Budget seems to be one that we can take through because there's a big lens on that as far as how we can afford it. But sometimes those things do slow pieces down. But it's not criticism, it's just a reality of kind of understanding how that flows. But then how do we address that when it comes to the meeting? Do we need to, that's to your question, Brian. So by the time it comes to multiple committees, pretty much the whole board is seen. most, at least usually it's 6 out of 7 board members have seen it. And then to what level is the formal presentation around that? Is that can take time? So from an efficiency standpoint, those are just some observations.
I think the other thing too, I'm sorry, Martha.
Marcus.
Yeah, two things. One, I think we've seen great public improvement with Ann's synopsis
Yes.
of what's been approved and discussed at the board meeting. I think it's really clear, it's succinct, it's a one-pager typically. And I think that's a real help for the general public. Two, probably my biggest frustration as a board member is listening to the entire 20-minute PowerPoint, slide by slide by slide, versus a synthesis of that. And there are some we have to get, again, because the public needs to see it. But that's the one area where I think we could save multiple minutes per meeting, where you get a 35-minute PowerPoint in your committee. I think that should be docked to 15 tops when it comes to the board. We don't have to go through all, let's hit the key things. And I think Tim's done a pretty good job of that this year with just, picking the slides that are most important for the board to hear, the public to hear. But I think we could try to encourage more of that to save on time.
I agree with that point. When you get to 9:30, you see a 35-page PowerPoint presentation that's going to be read each slide. I'm not sure that is really effective. So I think when these people come to the board, you should be able in 10 or 15 minutes to get your point across. I'm doing that on a daily basis. And we're talking to people that have a half hour, and we've got to have our presentation done and let them ask 15 minutes worth of questions, and they're making decisions. And I think, from a board standpoint, what do we really want to hear? When you sit down and say, our purpose here is moving education forward, what are those key metrics that say we're on track? You can think about graduation rates, you can think about proficiency, but that's a discussion, at a retreat. What are we comfortable with getting that information to say we're on track with what we're doing? And I think the other thing too, and I've mentioned this, it's probably a broken record, but when you sit down and say, okay, we're going to talk about the budget this month, or co-curriculars this month, or whatever those topics are, you kind of have an overarching annual plan for the board as to these are the topics we're going to hit, which is going to help the administration when they come to the board to be more targeted and focused on and a more polished presentation, because they know in 2 months I'm up, or 6 months or whatever.
Yeah, and some of that stuff we do have. We have a 12-month that comes in at time. But you're right with regards to some of the bigger presentations. And that was a piece we did if you go back to like 2018 to 2020. We did like a special board meeting where it was curriculum presentations. We haven't done this the last few years, but it was what we used to do, curriculum presentations at the board meeting. They just got too long. So we moved those off to a special meeting where they were like an hour and a half. We had 3 different groups come in and they talked about things happening in social studies, science. Yeah, some of that now, but it's usually when you have a recommendation. But some of those kind of this continual updates is a piece we've gotten away from the last 2 years. So that's another piece we can talk about. Re-implement some level of that. And those we're trying to get at. We had 15, 20 minutes to ask questions, and then we rotate through and we do 2 different.
But I think to that point, that's where you use your consent agenda. Right. And what, and I think you asked the question, you know, what can we put in the consent agenda? You know, when I first got on the board, we were talking financials every board meeting.
Correct.
And now they're, all the checks and everything are sitting in the consent agenda. And that's probably a big topic, you know,
Especially coming up.
and you talk about the wellness center, you know, that we talked about that almost every board member, and then it became consent. So
I agree. So if Tim Shell put a large 35-page presentation in board book, does that have to go up? I mean, he could give us a summary of what we've already read before we got here. That's what I'm saying. Is it for the public or is it for us? Because if it's for us, we should be doing the work before we get here. And then a 2-page summary, and then we come with our questions. So that would shorten a lot of things. But if they're coming through and have to rehash everything for the public, then
But
that's
the
gonna-
public- the
I know it's
public
part of it.
gets- They get that board book.
Right.
They can get access to that. So, that's a very valid way to have some of the presentations. Is It's in board book, reference that for the public.
Right.
We're not going through this whole presentation, but, just do the 5-minute overview and take our questions.
Right, and Randy has some powers that we don't need our approval. So why do we need to hear about it? I mean, he's got hiring power for some people, right? That they have to be still approved. But
We have the hiring, most of them by our policies have the. But teachers are required for us to bring in care coaches like that, and that those have to come to the board.
but with our, it seems like they're hired really sort of anyway. There's just a formality. So
Yeah, but I think law requires us to do it, doesn't it?
For any of those that have a contract, administration of teachers, et cetera, those are required by statute.
Right.
The other ones are just by policy. Make those decisions.
Just, the committee meetings are public as well, so they've seen them in the committee if they really wanted to. So nothing's hidden from them. That's part of the efficiency of Brock when you started putting all these public. So I agree. We've seen it already. Let's go to this.
I get the committee part, and that's always been a discussion sometimes in the past. But there's also been a bit of a trend of the committee meetings are moving more into the day, which means a lot of the public would not have access to the committee meetings. So if you're going to move committee meetings to 7 a.m., 3 p.m., 11 a.m., whatever, then you have to understand that people who might have a question, really, you've severely limited the ability of most of the public to make that meeting or be there to see it.
Is they recorded?
They are recorded, but again, if you sit there and take it off your regular agenda, then they can't come and make a comment on it, and they can't make a comment there. It's, I don't know, if you're,
we
have this problem with the VA board.
Make comments and read everything.
we had this problem with the VA board, and it was, when you're running 3 retirement homes, people care. And when you're running the large Veterans Trust Fund and college money and the VA loan program and home mortgage program, people wanted to talk about it. And we had a problem that our meetings were taking a day and a half. We would start Saturday morning and our meeting would end until Sunday afternoon. And one of our ways of cutting that down was to say, well, you have the committee meeting. Well, that very quickly became, yeah, we have a committee meeting, but you ran it during a business day and nobody could be there. There was actually a lawsuit around it. It becomes hard on how to let the public be part of it. You say you want it to be open and transparent and have public input, but if you schedule the time and the vast majority of the public can't come to make input, it's hard. And how to balance all that is one thing. We got around with it by actually literally putting a public comment section before each agenda item on the thing. So people would talk about the agenda item rather than everybody talked for, the big amount at the beginning and then suddenly nothing for the whole rest of the meeting. I don't think that'll work here, because it'll tie your meeting up more. But if you're going to refer people to a committee meeting, you've got to make the committee meeting accessible. Right now, they're recorded. They're not live. They're not. And if you put them during the day, they can't be there.
But we still have a notice for committee meetings, right?
There's still a notice, there's still a public comment, there we take them in person or by email. And then the action items are what makes it to the agenda and goes off that.
Does the public have a clear understanding how to access board book and the agenda items and to log in to get that?
Those that want to.
I don't think it's ever printed on the agenda, is it?
We'll occasionally get a call about how to access it. And we can walk through it, but
Well, maybe that's something we could put on the agenda is for board items and attachments. Here's how you access.
Put a link for the videos
Or put the link there, yeah.
in the agenda.
But that's why we have public comments. If we put a notice out, they have the time to review it if they really care. They have a public comment period for our committee meetings as well. Anyway, I think we can work on that.
And I think there's a lot of people that have found email addresses to make sure they comment. So I think there's still access and there's the ability to make comments.
that's something that the board would like us to look at. If we have something's found its way through committee, you have a large presentation in your board book for the monthly meeting. That really, having lots of administrative, like this, do a summary of the high points of that next request as opposed to going through. Let's try that and see how that works.
I think that's.
Okay.
Like many of us during the week, once we read it, we'll reach out before the meeting to ask about questions.
That works great.
So kind of going along with that, the next item is and I don't want to go through this item by item, we'll be here till tomorrow morning or Monday morning. There was a concern about board committees being used effectively, and I guess in general, I would just like to use this criteria to talk about committees, board committees, with the addition of the DEI and the Forever Goals Committee that never meets except maybe once a year. Can we look at, because Rebecca's going to be kind of sending out your or our desires on what committees. Is it appropriate to, and can we do it at this meeting, talk about what we do with that DEI? Is that going to be a committee looking forward, and should it replace the goals? So we still have 7, so we still have 3 positions in each. I don't know, that goals committee has been so underused, not know when to use it, should it be setting the goals? It has taken on so many roles over the past 4 to 5 years.
That's
No.
really having sustainability from board to board.
Exactly.
So as the board has changed over, it's taking on different needs and different purposes, but it's never stayed consistent. So it's been everything from being deep into the weeds of reviewing goals to really never needed. Taking out kind of some of the strategic planning pieces. So it's kind of been all over.
Should it be more of our kind of the initiative that is driving that year? Like right now, I feel that the DEI initiative should be our driver. Should that be from the goals? I'm just trying to look at what our committees going to be.
Well, a year, maybe it was 2 years ago, I looked at board policy with regard to the goal committee and what they're supposed to do, and there are specific deadlines by November, by January, by that sort of thing. And I don't think that's necessarily needed. I would hope that we can walk out of here tonight and know the goals we want to work on, and we can develop them. And
Correct.
so I hate to say, let's get rid of the committee, but to me, if they're, the goals, the goal committee's key goal is to set the goals for the school board, we should have those done by September. You know, it shouldn't, or sooner, it shouldn't be finalized in January, approved in February, that kind of thing. And so I'm not sure why we couldn't have the goals set up and then maybe keep the committee just to put them in a concrete way based upon this meeting. But to me, that should be maybe a once a year meeting.
Or it's a piece of just bringing this goals.
Right, why don't we just bring them here if it's only going to meet once? We're only going to meet once and then we're going to have to bring them all here anyway. Is it just more efficient to bring them here?
That's what we've done the last few years with the goals, is we kind of give broad conversation around goals at this meeting.
Yeah.
Which then we usually take back administratively, we put some language to them to kind of clean them up a bit, and then we bring them back to the committee, and then they find themselves to the board. So those would just go straight to the board. And then have, usually that's a piece that would be administration, we talk about it with the president, and then we go forward to the board. So from that respect, you probably don't need that extra step of the committee unless you really like that. But the goals committee just hasn't, it's kind of a stagnant committee right now because there's just never been agreement on what you really want it to do. It's kind of where it's been.
Don't we have committees that are just kind of dormant anyways right now? Isn't there a committee or two? Or did we get rid of
Most of
those?
them are all on
They're
some
all-
level of cycle.
Yeah, they're all.
Yeah, the co-curricular association meets usually 3-4 times a year based on the cycle of the different activities. HR and budget are on their cycle, curriculum meets regularly. Policy is a busy committee, it's like, do some of those things. But yeah, that's
We've
gonna
made
be-
them busy.
That's gonna be a busy committee moving forward, but that's the one that I think is probably the one that there's just never been really consistent. You know, it used to be, I think, goals and there was a visions committee and some other pieces that were tied into those over the years.
Yeah, I thought there was a vision committee that I was assigned to at one time. And
That's a person, you know, I mean, that's sort of like the village liaison, if you remember about 6 of those.
Right.
And some of those are more used than others.
no, there was actually like a
Oh, yeah.
vision committee.
Evaluation.
The visions committee used to be, if you remember, we used to have every late summer, we have where all the elected officials from the school district around the boundaries of the district would come together. So we have all the elected officials from Springfield, Dane, the village, et cetera. We had a speaker and a dinner, and that was kind of a collaborative event. That was kind of put together by the goals and visions committee. We haven't done that in quite a few years.
Yeah, I was thinking the same thing on our next, I can see us getting away from the goals
Well,
committee
Can
and
we do that just for next year instead of having that goals committee?
Yeah, let's keep
Can we
going.
just agree that the goal will be brought to the full board every time? Because, you know, that's kind of what has happened, but make our 7th committee the DEI committee,
The what?
the DEI
Yeah.
committee. So we still have 7 committees for next year, which seems to balance well. And do that, can we just do that? Maybe? Do it for the formal?
Or you can do that.
I would,
I make the motion to do that effectively.
yes.
second.
Any other discussion or comments? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. Perfect. So any other people can bring out anything you want, some of these boards are.
We haven't done much with legislation.
No, those are low, they're
Yeah.
always low, I'm not even sure, you know, this is a standardized, um.
Yeah, we're looking to
survey,
achieve some of those things.
and. You know,
Well, I think, Mark, you've reached out to a few, I think, at the beginning of COVID, but.
Yeah, well, and I became less involved because of things that happen. But
Obviously.
I do think it's something that we need to be more active on. And I'm certainly willing to become more active with that because I'm healthier to do it. Dave, I think, has made a number of good points. At the time we do react to something we've heard about in the newspaper, is kind of like to do anything but, the cow's out of the barn, or I guess it's the horses out of the barn. But I do think that's an area that we could probably make stronger.
Yeah, I agree.
And
Yeah.
if I were put on it, or I think who's ever put on it as their responsibility, I think they should be contacting you prior to a board meeting if there's something urgent, or important that should come to the public's
Is that
attention.
in a category below our committees, is the legislative?
Yeah,
And that will stay there.
So it's there
Yep, and
Yeah,
so
but-
if you have that interest or
Yeah.
something.
for somebody, yeah.
What level of like legislative update do you want us to? We see these things come through, just like the school board association has those notices come through, and we obviously see those administratively through our associations. Do you want some of those things kind of added to? I really haven't done much with that part of the agenda unless there's something that's in a critical way that would come out, or we've written something towards it that marks us and taken some role on. You want more of an update at board meetings on some of those things?
I think
Haven't done that.
whoever has that responsibility, and maybe with your, oh, by the way, reminders if they're not quite attentive to it, what are some of the pending legislative agendas that we, at least the public should be aware of too, not just us, but the public, and that'd be a great way for them to hear it.
Yeah.
And I think, some months there will be nothing and some months there will be something.
Were you thinking just sort of like hot topics or topics that directly affect an issue here at Waunakee? Not
I
that,
think any state legislative agenda that impacts our district specifically should be the focus.
Mhm.
And as well as any important hearings that we would like public to get to and be aware of.
Classified at different hearings.
We know.
Administrative, we board members, or club.
Perfect. So that'll, we'll try to make that more active.
Assuming this was me on this one, we evaluate the superintendent at least annually against clear goals and with performance criteria that include measures of student achievement. And I am not sure. And I only say that so when I was brought on, I don't clearly remember anything like what we're talking about here in terms of goals that I'm going to be evaluating the superintendent. So with our new people coming on, could there be more of an orientation of, hey, why don't you look at, this is what you're gonna be doing, and really kind of take note to
Like
these kind of
having
things? Because I had, in terms of judging on someone, I was like, I don't know, I don't even have anything to think about with that topic. So just as a point of.
And I guess I would second that. I think that's an area that we don't do a great job with orientation. When does that come up? Well, you've been on a couple of years, you realize that's Tim's report a lot on student achievement, and that someone is tracking it, that Randy's responsible for. And but you're right. I think there's a number of items like that we can do better, serve our new members better with.
But even the whole tool, you're saying.
Right.
Yeah.
Like maybe even see the tooling.
Right.
Sure. Yeah.
Because I think that's not something we should have a lot of. Really knows a lot of other information, but it's not.
Yeah, that's a good idea. Any other comments on this tool? And again, it's a standardized tool we've chosen to use really almost for the last 10 years. We used to have a different one that was very wordy and difficult to use. This one is long.
I don't know if this is the right time or the wrong time to do this. I do want to thank all those who responded, but I'm disappointed we only had 6 responses from most of the categories. And I think we really need to, I'm not trying to be chastising, but as a board, this is a huge responsibility. I'm not sure why they shouldn't be 7-0 for most of the votes. And I hope we can do better next year.
So any other comments on the school perception? If not, we can move on to there. In addition to the school perception, anybody who wanted to add additional comments, there are these 4 questions. And again, maybe it's when we talk about this, if this is a valuable component to the evaluation. This was way before my time that these 4 questions were generated. But, you know, I think there were good comments put forth again on the summary questions.
Yeah, no, I think this actually tells me more than
Yeah,
some of this. So
yeah.
this is,
I think, a great place, especially for the improvement areas that I always go to when we start setting those priorities for next year.
Yeah.
One comment that I see that I think is really valid, and when I filled out the priorities, it's like, wow, how could anybody really do all of these priorities in 1 year more adequately, you know, even make a dent in them? The suggestion that maybe we narrow that down to 1 or 2 or possibly 3, I think is a good suggestion to, you know, let's figure out, you know, next year, I know we have that referendum, that's going to take a huge amount of time. Let's be realistic when we set those priorities on the amount of time, because running a school of the employees and the students that we have also takes a great deal. Randy needs to.
I think the sheet really gives a pretty good list of items that we've synthesized for a focus point.
Exactly.
You know, and clearly, I think the referendum is one of those. And I would argue continued work with our DEI initiative would be one of those. And then the third one, if we're going to have to be maintaining the excellence that we have through budgeting and that sort of thing.
And referencing the excellent staff, we need to really,
Right.
I think, prioritize anything that we can do to staff and prioritize their working conditions.
I think this past year, the communication priority kept that on the table. And I'm not sure, I mean, there's still things we can do to improve, but I'm not certain there's a district in Dane County that does more than we do. And I think for communication, and I think it's worth doing, but I do think that probably already helped our focus this year on. But one of the comments was, you know, continue doing some of the things you've been doing, but focus on the key, the dynamic ones we need to really do work with.
Anybody else want to question or make any additional comments on the floor? If not, we can move to the priorities. So, you know, this is really what we as a board, in conjunction with Randy and his team came up on. This is what we wanted to move forward with this year. And again, the return to school took an immense amount of time. To me, that was the biggest focus of the entire year. We had the community or the communication engagement. You know, the attendance was kind of minimal, but I think that having them is still valuable. The governance, the policies, I mean, all of it. When I look at the scores, I think they're actually pretty high for the amount of work we charged ourselves and the administration to do this year. And I think maybe it was a little bit over
Ambitious.
ambitious. Thank you. So,
So here's a question. Should the priorities be any different than our goals? Aren't those the same things?
they are, to me, they are.
They are, and they are to me.
Yeah.
And so do we want to, before we leave tonight, identify 2 or 3 that we really want to emphasize and then flesh them out?
I think that would be helpful if we can come up with, I would say maximum of 3, especially with that referendum. And actually, like you said before, between the referendum and, our staff and maintaining the excellence of keeping, retaining, and staff issues and the DEI initiative.
What I wrote down for our service referendum, DEI, and maintaining excellence, and under maintaining excellence, it has a piece where we allocate adequate budget to do so, supporting the staff, and then the curriculum and instruction. So those are kind of the 3 things that fall under that.
How's your feeling about that? And
I think it's good to keep it small. 3 is plenty, especially when you have referendum. Because you have to still run the district.
I think that referendum, see the pathway of that. We've got that mapped out. That's a lot of work. It's a priority, and it's going to be a big piece for this body to work through, particularly as we kind of get through the summer. And then when the referendum passes, then there's continued 2-day reprieve, and then go back into it. Maintaining excellence, piece, listen to public care staff and CNI things. Those are kind of our core business. As we start looking at that stuff that we have specific positions specifically in place to do. That's very important for us. I think as Jackie pointed out, you kind of have those key things you kind of those are sort of the key things. That's our core. The piece that probably has the most work to flesh out is the DEI.
Yeah.
So that's this. So when you look at those, it's kind of, I can picture the referendum piece, I can picture the maintaining excellence, the piece that we're going to need to kind of put together, doing the staff, board, et cetera, is around the DEI. Because that's the one that has most questions around, but it's also the one that's priority to move forward with. That makes it successful.
Is there any thought, this was thinking, is there any thought to changing DEI name to just inclusion? Because that's what it is. I think DEI has got such a negative name now, but it's basically an inclusion. We're looking at the goal of being included and inclusion in our school districts. Do we need to really spell out everything that we need to be included in?
If you change it to inclusion, somebody's going to read that and say,
I know.
"Get rid of the DEI committee. You got rid of the DEI committee."
That's why I'm
It's
bringing it up.
already out there.
But I think if you're talking about what we're really looking at is student inclusion. That's what we're looking at. Everybody that feels like they're part of the school. And when we have barriers to that, that's what we want to work on.
whatever barriers.
Yeah.
I don't disagree. But right now, DEI is a public acronym that's used in corporate America. It's used in educational, institutionally. And I think you take any one of those words out of there, you're alienating a certain group because it looks like you're sweeping things under the rock to make it more palatable to the public. And I would prefer that we keep the acronym because I think it spells out what we're focusing on. And they're all similar, but there's different nuances with each word.
It's just a question.
No,
Challenge everyone, so.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess I have to agree that I think for the public, I know what our focus is on, but I think you're right. I think the public needs to
I would agree on those three priorities.
I guess one of the things that I would ask that you flesh out at some point is, right now we have the DEI committee of the board. We've kind of set up a few things with following up on some of the listening sessions with the kids, and having some of the pieces with administration coming in. Of course, this year, and then taking the ad hoc recommendations and those getting parceled out to the different committees that we have. So that's a piece. So I think one of the things that I would ask is that it's at a point here as we move forward is to define kind of when we say that DEI is a priority, what does that mean?
But I think that when you parcel out those audit items to the other committees, that still has to come back to the DEI. It can't just be
Right.
lost in the other committees.
Yeah, that's the piece.
Case in point, I'm sure, it just, the questions are taken up HR. There's something we don't have privy to unless we're on the HR committee. And it's something, the original DEI committee brought up with regard to hiring practices. And I'm not sure we need to change what we're doing, but I think there needs to be a public clarification of how we're doing this and some of the difficulties we may have in meeting that goal. And so, but the committee is the one that can best do that, and then it comes back to us to share to the public.
And I guess what my question
Randy,
is.
I think the other thing we've got to do is we've got to put timelines on this, because if we don't put timelines on, it just gets lost. It's like we don't have time to, something more important comes up. So we divvied that out at the last EEI committee, what's a respectable time on each one of those. And I think if you come back to us at the next EEI committee meeting, saying, okay, this is when, we think we can make this happen.
Sure. That was my question. I was wondering, what does that actually mean? When we say that's a priority. The priority is following through with what we've already stated out there.
Right.
That keeping the clarity.
All right. Are we good to move on?
So we don't need to propose anything, but we're just calmly accepting it.
We're gonna write them up.
Okay, in the next meeting.
Right. They'll come back through the board for final approval. We're just looking at suggestions with what we kind of would like to write up.
And I would suggest on these, when you're assigned a committee, that we sort of look at these three big priorities too, and think about, is our decision here at co-curriculars meet any of these, or
Right.
just, it may not be anything near it. It may just be a decision, but at least try to put that in, and
Well, again, I think some of that, someone mentioned here, there are ongoing things we do, and certain committees will do them regardless of what the priorities are, because it's business that has to happen.
Right.
And so I think that's part of what you're saying.
What I can do is take these three priorities, write them up, bring them back to the board and as a draft.
Right.
So I think the last item for the evening is to look at the draft that Mark and David put together for a response to supporting our school. I appreciate what you did. I think it's well drafted. I like the very specifics in there of how to address concerns. The reason why we're sending this out is listed, appreciating our staff members. I like the tone. We can't control our public, but we can respond to what we've heard. And I think that's what I hear in this letter. Ted, I know that you mentioned in close.
I just see these two paragraphs here as being, there could be, you intend on putting this in the paper, like it would go in the Tribune, so it's going to the general public, and they're going to read it. It brings up things that, what are they talking about? Based on rumors, it leads to so-and-so going to someone else, like, you know what they're talking about? And then it's going to lead to more rumors. The fact that those two paragraphs are in there, you could kind of cut them out. You cover the same thing. You end it with.
Well, the reason they're in there is because social media has been openly criticizing staff and students, some by name.
As does social media with absolutely everything.
And we don't have control over it. That's why it's in there, is to ask the community then to not, to be more supportive of our staff despite what you're reading. Without that in there, I don't think there's much of a point of making a statement, because the community has targeted a small portion has targeted the integrity of our staff and students. And again, to the point that from talking to a number of teachers, there are going to be a number of resignations because they're overburdened by the stress they feel to be a teacher in Waunakee. And I'm not sure that'd be different any other community of this district at this point. I don't think it's a statement criticizing our community. I think it's just pointing to those who are being negative, the effects they're having, and that we support our staff.
I think when you look at it going into the Tribune just last week, they wrote a whole article on it and talked about this issue. They published that on their pages. So if you're getting the Tribune and you're reading it, you've already read about this whole thing. And the fact that it's made it to national papers around the country, probably anyone who's going to read a newspaper has probably heard about this already. So I don't think we're really bringing up a new issue or an issue that they would be confused about. Now, could we specifically call it the furry over furries?
I don't think
we need to do that. I think anyone who's going to read the paper has already read it and will have.
But it's broader than that.
Yeah, it's the DEI initiatives that teachers are doing. It's not just one issue.
No, you're right. It's not just one issue, but I don't think there's going to be much confusion over it.
It's very estimation. So obviously the Tribune is something that you would bring to the next board meeting, and then you'd also send out to like all parents through like a school messenger message, or is it solely kind of doing a piece that you would address at a board meeting and then put in the Tribune? So what's the communication plan for it?
But, yeah.
Yeah, my thought was we read it at the next board meeting, if approved, have it printed that week, so it comes up a Friday after the board meeting in the trip.
Could I suggest you put it up on the school's Facebook page too?
Yeah.
Because those issues were specifically already addressed at the school's
No, I agree.
Facebook page.
Facebook, or do we want it on the website?
We have a slice on the website that's board communication. There's a piece that we have up there that we have some of those type of things. That's where it's going. It's kind of in there.
So this came up in the listening session, I think in both of them that I've been in recently, the same to support the teachers and rumors and false stuff coming up. So me as a board member, how I'm not investigating anything, how can I say that what is being said is incorrect? And so when you put a statement out there and saying, yeah, maybe this one is, what about the next one that comes up? I'm a board member supporting my teachers. Am I just supposed to give the blanket, yeah, that's a lie and there's no validity to that? Yeah, because you said it in the paper already. You're supposed to be supporting the teachers. I don't have a way to judge that.
To me, and maybe I'm just a dinosaur, but rather than airing your concern on a Facebook page, why aren't you going to the teacher and the principal? That indicates that in the last paragraph, versus broadcasting your concern to everybody before anything's had a chance to be resolved. If I have a problem with my wife, I'm not going to tell the neighbor about it and the whole neighborhood. I need to resolve it internally. And to me, that's the most effective way to do it. I'm not sure. You go into the public media, now you're really putting pressure on all teachers because this one thing came up in one area, because that one thing is characterizing multiple teachers, not just one.
Don't get me, that's exactly what I think of. I mean, you know my thoughts on social media. I can't stand it. I think it's the worst thing out there, but then it addresses this, like it lumps things in that there could be some truths to some things. I don't know, but I'm saying, I'm giving them the benefit of the doubt that, what you hear on social media is totally wrong. It just feels wrong in the way that that's being stated.
Okay.
I totally think teachers should be supported, but
I think that's what paragraph 4 addresses. If there's a process for addressing concerns. So there could be some concerns that come up and they're valid. And so you should go the route of how you could solve them as opposed to just complaining about it.
true, there's no reason to start.
I'm not sure a letter like this is going to change the attitudes
I know.
of people who would do this stuff, because they do it behind closed
It's
doors.
almost like it sticks
Yeah.
we're going to do more.
That's not the target of the
I
letter.
think the teachers are the target of the
Yeah.
Right.
to supporting them.
We need to let them know that.
So they're the target and yet you're telling them this is the process. You're telling the teachers this is what the process is.
No, they're the ones that needed our support.
Yeah, they're
And we can-
hearing that we're trying to support them and clarify a more effective way of dealing with complaints and concerns, and no one's questioning the legitimacy that people have. Is the one paragraph addresses false issues, but I think that's just one part of the message. Now, I think the teachers, business practice of the teachers here, we're speaking out in their defense and addressing some of the things that have happened in the community that weigh heavily on their shoulders. And these are the things that I've heard through multiple conversations.
I think some of the listening sessions, I was with Ted too, and teachers are a little bit apprehensive. They feel aligned and they feel it. And I thought, well, the more you talk about it, you just elevate those rumors and stuff. So I was trying to figure out how to do something that wouldn't make it worse. And I think this does without inflaming anything. I think it gives the support that the teachers are asking, what does the board think about this? Why don't they say something? Well, we can't fix it. But I think this goes a little way in doing that.
And that's something I hope it reaches, because, we have a phenomenal community that supports us so wonderfully, but there are voices that speak out that have made it very difficult to be an educator in our community, and our staff needs to hear that we recognize them and support them.
I just have a comment at the last one. It says build up and versus tearing down. Together we can be better. Those feel a little bit like bumper stickers to me. So
Yeah, we can drop
the
that.
rest of it I really like.
Is there, take a look at the third paragraph. And I don't know all the conversation that went into kind of putting it together, but what if you ended it after rumors?
Yeah.
It kind of gets.
Yeah,
It's a little better.
I would agree.
I didn't hear which part you're talking about.
The
Third paragraph, if you ended it after rumors.
So you take out the last 3
That was
lines.
just made, I was just trying to get to.
I don't know. I think by taking those out, those are almost the direct reference towards what you're saying about what's the effect, what was the cause. You get it. It was hard to try to figure out a way to say this without specifically saying it. I think it's a very tough road to walk down the middle of. I thought those 2 sentences get towards a point where those who were most upset by what happened understand that it was addressing them without specifically naming it. I get it's tough.
But
If you just say disrupting classes, that was the main accusation, really. If you don't say that, then I do think we start sliding more towards what Ted was saying. What the heck were we talking about? Because there is a lot out there.
But I think if you take out those last sentence, stop it at rumors, this is a broader statement for even things to come. It isn't just a one issue that's making teachers upset. It's the general tenor of always complaining about the teachers in public my kid did something and the school's bad. It's don't do that in public is what we're saying, not specific incidences. And I think.
Well, I think it still says that,
but I think that those sentences that students were just outrageous behavior, you're naming something that's specific. I think the other.
Right. It may take away from the broader message.
The broader message.
Suddenly you're excused if you didn't do that horrible thing.
And what's going to come up next
You just
month?
do the minor offenses, you're kind of excused now because
So I would support
I
that.
kind of would support ending
I've been crossing out quite a bit of this because again, our focus is on supporting our staff and stuff. I feel like we're jabbing at a couple sentences. We're just poking the people who have keep passed it on, but that's not the point. So the first two paragraphs, fine. I even cross out everything, but we ask you to join us in supporting our staff and students, period. Then go to add that without your support, we couldn't be successful school district as we are. We ask you to join us supporting our students, staff, cross out the rest of it. Then you go down, there is a process for addressing issues of your child, cross out the rest of that, keep the next paragraph. And then we are proud of our staff and the professional way they handle the classrooms in the Waunakee School District and the Waunakee Community School District. Are ask you to join in supporting your outstanding staff and students together. So
don't even make a comment about the isolated social media criticism.
Right. Because
Why write the letter?
want
Literally.
to support our staff. Say we understand.
Now you're not even saying you're standing up for them about anything. You're just saying support our staff.
Yeah, it'd be like some Prairie saying support our staff at the start of COVID without talking about the criticism of the staff, how they're dealing with COVID.
But I don't think you need to talk about social media, the isolated few.
I guess I'm out the door, so I don't really care what you write in a sense, because it's not going to fall back on me. And I'm not going to have to deal with the upset teachers who are going to or students there are some students who are really pissed that they were named and they've been harassed more. I mean, I have to ask you about her later, but we seem to be worried about people who are attacking our students and teachers, and we're worried about them being upset.
No, I'm worried that it
We don't want to
looks like we're just sitting and doing this. Instead of, there's a better way of writing this without sitting there and poking somebody in the chest that says, we understand what you've been going through over the last 2 years in the classroom and through social media. We support you and blah, blah, without saying the isolated few and pointing fingers at certain people.
And that goes then, but what you're saying is, what I think Judy said, let's drop the last two sentences, and I think the rest of it's fine. And agree, drop the last line, because that's already set up above.
I agree. The people I get stuff like this from, I'm sorry, I'll say it right here. I don't listen to what they say because they're so out there.
Teachers do. They're scared to talk in their classroom.
So the teachers want us to say, we point at the people who are doing this?
We're not pointing
The
at
kind of thing that's being done.
We're
Yeah,
pointing
right,
at
but you
an
don't have to-
activity, and now you don't want to mention the activity. We're not mentioning the person's name. We're not mentioning a specific incident. Now we don't even want to talk about the activity. We just want to say we support our teachers.
But there's other things. It's not just this,
for teacher appreciation.
it's not just this thing that's happened in the last 6 weeks. It's been for 2 years.
No, that's
Right.
why I think that you keep
social
the
media.
first two, not the final two, so not the first two. You keep the first two, not the final two.
Because you've got social media there.
You didn't have teachers saying this a year ago. Did you, at any of the listening sessions, I didn't hear this.
They're also tired.
I've heard it this year, though.
They just,
I've heard it in the last 2 months.
I'm surprised we didn't have.
Okay,
50
so
people.
how about this? We take the second sentence, stop at.
Which paragraph are you in?
The third paragraph,
Okay,
and after, instead of, after accusations, referring to, drop what's there and put referring to. COVID, DEI, something to that effect. And identify the 2 or 3 things, whether it be COVID, DEI, or rumors based upon fake national news.
I still think if you say social media with criticism and accusations that are untrue and based on rumors, I don't want to list DEI.
Oh, they are,
all those.
yeah.
I don't want to list those
Okay.
things. I like the social media and rumors and untrue and leave it at that.
Okay.
And then, so if we get rid of to say students all the way to the end, so stop at rumors and get rid of the rest. And then I can live. I'm happy then.
I like giving them that process and the.
Yeah, I do too.
paragraph of, maybe a better way to deal with concerns.
But we can give them a process, but they're,
We know that, Jack, but let's give them a process.
but still to Brian, you're kicking the bear. And,
Some of the bear. I think it's, I may be wrong, but I think it's a respectful tone.
The bear's coming no matter what.
But I think Ted's point was
You're absolutely right.
that we have to show them a process.
So
There could be
whether we
something
do
wrong.
this or not.
We need to say,
Yeah.
there's a process.
So help the staff,
We're supporting them.
Yeah.
It really comes down to social media.
the students and the staff, help the ones who are being targeted by
And
it.
to your point, you gotta tune it out.
So can we live with getting rid of those last 2 sentences, getting rid of the 2 phrases at the end?
Mhm. Yep. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So need a motion. I think so.
Do this, we can just do edits to it with that, as we have a copy of it, and then we'll just. And then what we'll do is bring it to the next board meeting.
So we want to read it.
We want to read it the next board,
We
not
want to
approve of it.
read it at the next board meeting.
Do we have to wait to the board meeting to get it by, as a board through email
Sure, we can get it.
and just
Yeah, we can send it out. Yeah.
thumbs up or thumbs down, or do we have to go wait for a board vote?
General
Okay, can we
consensus.
publish it without a board vote?
Well, if it's read at the board meeting, the paper will pick it up.
And then we'll give the paper a
We
copy.
want to do a vote, there's nothing wrong with that.
Sure.
Adopt it,
I move that we adopt this letter, read it at our next board meeting with the changes on it.
Second.
And included in the paper.
I think I'm hesitant to vote yes, because I want to see the final version for it. I would just say go move with it, and then we'll see the final. Then we can vote on it and read it.
Well, we do have a motion on the
Yeah.
table, so.
Can we table the motion?
What?
You can put an amendment on it, or, yeah.
I amend.
Oh, we do have our another meeting coming up before the board meeting.
Make a motion
Yeah.
to table it.
That's
Bring it to
another
the-
meeting.
Motion to table.
Motion to table,
A second.
second, all in favor of tabling the motion made by Judy?
Aye.
Aye.
All right.
No,
We're going to have discussion on a proposal before we vote.
Yeah.
Come on, come on.
We may be in a hurry to leave, but, this is board business. And I don't know what we're going to know more about this at the next meeting than we're going to know at this meeting. We know how it's going to read,
Well, Brian asked for a final copy.
but we know what the final copy is. So the last 2 and the last line are going to be out. The final copy is there if you parenthesize what's going to be kicked out of it. I mean, that would be an example. I think we're extending what we need to do as a board. Why can't we approve it tonight or not approve it tonight? We know exactly what it's gonna read.
But what if the wrong sentence is taken out between here and there? That's what I'm saying. I
You
mean,
don't trust Rebecca to get it what we just said?
She could just as easily send the wrong version to the paper as
Right.
much as
Yeah.
later, and I don't think she's going to.
no,
I make mistakes.
But we usually find.
Okay, so that's my comment. We do have a motion. There's more comments?
Didn't I have a motion and second, and it was voted
Yeah.
on?
But he made a
But
motion
he
to
made a
table
sub
it, so we have
motion
to
that
vote on
goes
that
before
first.
that motion.
Second.
And you seconded
So
that.
we tabled that motion and I was about to say all in favor of tabling that motion. Say aye.
I,
Opposed, say no.
Aye.
Nay.
No,
Nay.
You said both.
Nay,
You need a voice count?
I don't want to table it. That's what I need. I don't know how to do it.
Because we're meeting.
Did you catch how many that was?
Let's do
Okay, a vote.
So we're voting on tabling it right now. Is that
Right,
it?
correct.
Okay.
Until the May 2nd.
Until May 2nd. We were just going to table it, bring it back May 2nd. Dave,
no,
Judy, no. I would be yes. Ken,
Yes.
Jack,
Yes.
Mark,
No.
yes.
so it's 4-3. So we will bring it back on the 2nd. Okay. I don't think there's any appropriate actions discussed in close, so I think we ready to adjourn. Let's go back to open vote.
You go back.
Motion to close.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye.